U.S. State Secretary John Kerry met with the leader of the Palestinian National Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, in London in an attempt to urge Israel and Palestine to resume peace talks. According to the U.S. State Department spokeswoman Jen Psaki, Mr. Kerry made clear that while the door remains open to peace, it's up to the parties to determine whether they're willing to take the steps necessary to resume the talks. Joining us live to discuss it is Jonathan Sacerdoti, a commentator and Middle East analyst. Hello, Jonathan. Thanks for joining us now. First of all, what are the chances that peace talks between Israel and Palestine will actually resume anytime soon? In your view, what's your forecast?
Tzipi Livni, the Israeli minister in charge of the negotiations with the Palestinians, was in London yesterday. And in a closed briefing I attended, she was very clear in describing the current situation as what she called a pause in negotiations. She told us that she'd met with John Kerry earlier in the day, and while she was here in London, that had happened, and Mahmoud Abbas had met with Kerry just the day before in London. So in some ways, there's still some sort of contact going on between the two sides, who are mostly negotiating independently of each other via the US as an intermediary before the breakdown. But it's clear that right now they're not really talking about much except what future there can be and how talks might be resumed. And on that front, there's little movement that can really happen for now, because Israel quite rightly refuses to negotiate with the Palestinians while they embrace Hamas, the terrorist organization that rules in the Gaza Strip, and has a genocidal anti-Israel mission statement in the form of its original covenant. I mean, Hamas has a declared rejection of Israel as a Jewish state, of recognizing any borders or any negotiations agreed, and of desiring the death of all Jews everywhere. So that's pretty definitive, and they act on that credo all the time, launching hundreds or thousands of rockets into Israeli populated areas constantly from the Gaza Strip. So no state would really negotiate in those sort of circumstances. And for their part, Mr. Abbas seems content with having secured the release from jail of hundreds of convicted Palestinian terrorists, and now continues to pursue his unilateral approach with the UN, signing applications to join UN bodies through which he can then launch diplomatic assaults on Israel. So right now, it doesn't look likely, but obviously the will on the part of the US hasn't gone away.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jonathan, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas announced plans to reconcile with Hamas, but Israel says it will not negotiate with any government backed by Hamas. So do you think it will present a serious problem for U.S. Secretary John Kerry's peace effort?
Well, yes, I think that Kerry agrees with Israel on this. The US has made it clear that it believes that a rejection of violence is an essential part of any kind of negotiation even starting, and they've said that through the Quartet conditions. However, the fact that Mr. Abbas has talked about unity plans with Hamas isn't the same as anything really coming of those plans. He's announced similar unity deals, I think, 4 times in the past, and nothing's come of those. And that's why Tzipi Livni yesterday said that the official Israeli position is that the talks are paused, not permanently concluded, and that also seems to be Kerry's position. He's looking for a way to resume those talks, and should the circumstances be right, I think his enthusiasm for continuing the talks will be as great as ever.
Mm-hmm. Jonathan, you've just mentioned that the American side agrees on the previous point we've just discussed with Israel. Also earlier, Palestinian officials accused the Obama administration of actually favoring Israel in peace talks. What's your opinion on that in general, and is there any change in American stance and American position comparing to previous presidents, for instance?
I think the American commitment to non-violence is something that isn't pro-Israel or pro-Palestinian. I think it's pro-everyone. I mean, peace can't happen in a situation where there's terrorist violence taking place, and that's part of the point. I think the US has been pretty tough on Israel as well. Kerry at one stage mentioned that settlements had been an issue in the breakdown of the talks, but settlements were never part of the agreement Israel made before the talks started with America. And moreover, as Elliot Abrams has pointed out a couple of days ago in the Washington Post, if we analyse the data on settlements, we can see that Mr. Netanyahu has been building energetically, but only in the territories, or predominantly in the territories, that Israel will certainly keep. keep in any deal. So he's almost preparing for two states. And he's exercised some restraint, Abrams says, in construction in areas that will become Palestine. And in fact, he went on to say that if you look at Netanyahu's track record on this issue, he's been more restrained than Ehud Barak, the last Labour Prime Minister, whose government approved 3 times more new houses in small settlements in 2000 than Netanyahu did last year. And similarly, he mentions Ariel Sharon's government in 2002 that approved the construction of 960 new units, again, more than Netanyahu's 908 last year. So in a sense, he's been tough on Israel, even when it maybe didn't necessarily deserve it. And I think that since talks ended, everyone has been playing the blame game to some extent. Americans blaming Israel here and there, both Israel and America blaming the Palestinians blaming America for favoring Israel, and that's noise that I think we have to get through. Ultimately, certain basic principles seem obvious, that you can't really negotiate with some people who believe in the total destruction of your state, and you can't really negotiate with people whose founding covenant says that your state has no right to exist, never will, and that no negotiated peace is worth anything. And those precise things are said in the Hamas covenant. So I don't think it's a matter of favoring Israel to require some declarations against those ideas before negotiations can resume.
Well, thanks a lot for your analysis. That was Jonathan Sacerdoti, a commentator and a Middle East analyst, joining us live.